Good evening. Welcome to the Village Board of Trustees meeting for the Village of Pleasantville. Today is Monday, December 13. So if you are watching live Monday, December 13, we encourage you to call in if you have comments or questions. Our call-in number is 769-1677. As always, you can watch us live on both Cablevision and Verizon Fios, or on PCTV76.org through live web streaming. And after the fact, you can also watch the Village Board meetings on demand on the same PCTV76.org website. Our next work session is Monday, December 20th at 7 p.m. and our next regular meeting is Monday, December 27 at 8 p.m. with a work session at 7. I had a couple of announcements to make. And the first is, it's been a season of events, some related to the holiday and some not. Last week there was a reception held and sponsored by TD Bank on behalf of PCTV and their 10th anniversary. So it was a great event, a happy story that PCTV has turned 10. I turned to Jonathan, who is a board member at PCTV and the Village Board liaison. And a lot of thanks go to TD Bank for not only making their space available to it, but for sponsoring it and providing the food and refreshments. Very much appreciated on everybody's behalf. Another thing to note is that the Pleasantville Volunteer Fire Department had its annual holiday party yesterday, and the Pleasantville Fire Department Band, which is one of the few remaining fire department bands in New York State, and I think lays claim to the oldest fire department band in New York State, did a concert in the firehouse. Really just a great day. They sounded better than ever. There's something like 35 members, which I think is a high, at least in recent memory, and just a fantastic thing and a great opportunity for people in the community and environs to have an opportunity to play in a band. So it was a happy event, and the fire department put on a good event for the kids, and all around happy goings on. Chamber of Commerce has been busy as well. They were the sponsors of the tree lighting, which took place a couple of weeks ago, and they have also sponsored a number of economic development programs in recent weeks, including the mailing that hopefully all of you have gotten about holiday events, and also about opportunities to buy stuff within the Village of Pleasantville at Chamber of Commerce members. I remind you that they have a website that's quite comprehensive at pleasantville.com. A really great new website that I think went up, a year or so ago, Tony, am I right? And has continued to get better every year, and couldn't be a better opportunity to remind everybody that it's the merchants and businesses in downtown Pleasantville who help float the boat for all of us. And so when you think about buying something, especially when you're busy buying in the holiday season, buy local, buy Pleasantville, keep the money in the hands of the people who help us all year round. I think I mentioned at a previous meeting, but we have recently gotten the certificate that Pleasantville received the 2010 Gold Award and Pedestrian Safety Commendation from the Automobile Club of America, so that was a happy event. And also wanted to report that we received notice that 3 liquor licenses have been applied for, either renewal or new ones. One of them for the Riviera, another for Bollywood Bistro, both of which are renewals, and the third for Sundance Deli on Wheeler Avenue, which would be a new liquor license. Lastly, in this long list of things, but not least, the Volunteer Fire Department and the Ambulance Corps will be holding a blood drive. The holiday season tends to be a time period when fewer people give blood, and it produces a shortage of blood in the blood banks. So PVAC and the Pleasantville Fire Department are hosting a blood drive on Tuesday, December 28 at the Firehouse on Washington Avenue from 2:30 to 8:30. So be a perfect opportunity to, in the lull before New Year's, to take an opportunity to spend a restful time lying down for a little while and giving a little bit of blood on behalf of your fellow person. So, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that legislator Nona will be doing a live call-in on PCTV regarding the 2011 budget on Thursday at 9 p.m. and it would be streaming live on PCTV76.org. And you could call in at 747-4411 starting at 9 o'clock. and the legislator would answer any questions regarding the budget.
Great, thank you. Last thing I wanted to mention is a number of people have asked me, as they have over the last several months, what's with all these detour signs related to the Sunnyside Avenue Bridge? And we are in the same circumstance we were in, I think, before, Patty, that...
They went up, I think, in September with the intent of starting a project involving the railroad trestle. But Metro North is behind schedule. The crew that puts up the signs is way ahead of schedule. So since they are different departments, those signs have been somewhat covered with some sort of... No, they draped something over them now, as if they're going to have a big unveiling someday. But there is no detour in effect currently, but there will be.
So the intention on the part of Metro North is to make some structural improvements to the bridge at Sunnyside. There's no plan to widen it. It will remain the same width it is.
Right.
But there will be some periods of time when it is blocked, although Metro North has assured us that at the points at which they're actually working, when they leave for the night, they will maintain pedestrian access through there, even in circumstances where there isn't enough room for a car to get through.
Yeah, and I honestly don't know what to tell everybody. This was supposed to start in June. It had gotten postponed until September. It's almost January,
So by the time there actually is a detour, the detour signs will have become so commonplace we won't see them anymore. So
Maybe they need more
Probably
for
true.
our tax money.
They probably need another assessment, yes. The
All right.
detour tax assessment.
Right.
Detour.
anybody else have any announcements to add to that list? No. All right, we have tonight here representatives of O'Connor Davies, Munns and Dobbins, the Bennett Keelson Storch DeSantis division, a list of partners that goes on a mile long, reporting on the annual audit for the year ended May 31, 2010. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Again, my name is Scott Oling. I'm one of the partners at O'Connor Davies. I'm here tonight with Rob Danielle, who's the audit manager for the audit and has been doing the audit here for several years. So we're here tonight to present the results of the annual external audit. Hopefully everybody has a copy of the audit report. We're not going to go through the entire document, so in case anybody wants to get home and see the Giant game.
They're losing 3-0.
Yes, that's what I saw in the pizza restaurant before I give in.
Oh, I love it.
We've issued what's known as an unqualified opinion or a clean opinion on the village's financial statements. That's the highest form of assurance an auditor can provide. So it basically says that we believe the financial statements fairly present the village's results of operations for the year ended May 31st. Now, the village does operate a variety of funds. I'm just going to focus, my few minutes here on the general fund because that's your primary fund. But you also have a water fund to account for your, water billing activities, debt service fund to account for your debt obligations on borrowed monies, capital projects fund to account for, major capital improvements and purchases that are done during the year, a refuse fund, obviously for the garbage operations of the district, and a pool fund, which obviously accounts for the operations of the village's pool. But we're going to focus the few minutes on the general fund. The general fund appears on page 46 in summary form. That's the income statement for the general fund. More detail of the numbers that I'm going to go through on page 46 actually begins on page 48 and continues for several pages through to page 53 if you want to see some detail of the numbers that appear on 46. And page 47 is a comparative, so you could see side by side the numbers from 2010 versus 2009. So when you look at page 46, you see it's presented in 4 columns. First column is the original budget, so that would have been the budget approved by the trustees back in the spring, I gotta get my calendar right, spring of 2009 for your operations for the 9-10 fiscal year. So the first column is the original budget. The top part of the page are the revenue sources that were being estimated to support your budget. And you could see that primarily you have 2 main revenue sources that support the budget, much like everybody else in Westchester County. Real property tax provides most of the revenues for the budget, estimated at $8.7 million, and another $1 million in non-property taxes, which is essentially the sales tax distribution from Westchester County, utilities, taxes and franchise fees is in that $1 million number. You have departmental income, which are the various charges for recreation and parking and those kinds of things that provide almost another $1 million, and then some smaller revenue sources. So the revenues were estimated at $11.6 million, as you can see. As you continue down that first column, These are a summary of your various expenditure areas. So the first area is general government support. So those are more of the administrative type functions of the district, treasurer's office, tax certiorari payments, various buildings and grounds, village hall costs, those kinds of things. So that was estimated at $1.5 million. Your biggest expenditure is obviously in the area of public safety, and that's primarily to fund the police department. So that was about $3.1 million. The other big number down there, obviously culture and recreation, is the parks department and various things of that nature, $1.8 million. $2.4 million of your budget goes to employee benefits. So, those are the benefits that you either have to provide legally or contractually to your employees, primarily contributions to the state retirement systems, Social Security, your share of FICA, and health benefit costs. Those are the three main fringe benefits that you provide. As you continue down that column, you'll see some transfers in, a number there, about $350,000. That's money that comes back in from other funds, primarily the water fund and the debt service fund. So it's, what those funds spin off in some surplus comes back in as a budgeted item to offset some of your operating costs in the general fund, because probably most of your costs to operate those funds are accounted for in the general fund. This is the way to reimburse some of those costs. And then you see a line transfers out, $1.4 million. Those are primarily transfers to the debt service fund to fund the principal and interest obligations on your borrowed monies. So when you come down in that first column, you see you come down to a bracketed $230,000. And that is because when you adopted the budget, you anticipated that your expenditures would exceed your revenues by $230,000. But in New York State, all municipalities, school districts must have a balanced budget. The state apparently is the only part of the state that's exempt from balanced budget requirements.
And timely budgets.
Right? So you balance that by anticipating the use of $230,000 of previously accumulated fund balance. So fund balance that you had generated in prior years in the village, you use that and essentially were able to reduce property taxes by that amount. Because to have the balanced budget without the use of that would have required an additional $230,000 of a property tax levy. The second column is the final budget. So as you go through the year, things change, circumstances change, and a budget can be amended one of three ways. The most common way is the treasurer's office would come to you seeking budget transfers, just moving, reallocating resources from one line to another, but that doesn't impact the total budget. That's just one resource area to another. The second way a budget's amended is if you get in an unanticipated revenue source for spending on something that you didn't expect to spend on. So you get a grant to buy a table, you didn't expect it, so you raise the budget for the revenue estimate and an appropriation account so you could buy the table. And then the third way, which I heard somewhat before the meeting here, is sometimes you have to pay some bills that there is no revenue source for. For example, like tax certiorari. So in that case, you're appropriating money from your savings account, your fund balance, so that you can meet those bills that weren't anticipated, and you amend the budget that way. So this village had a little of everything. You could see the revenue estimate, about a third of the way down the page, was modified by about $20,000, very minimal. The expenditure column, though, you see was amended by about $250,000. So therefore, overall, when you come down to the bottom line in the second column, you anticipated utilizing $458,000 of your fund balance. So that was a plan. First two columns are the plan. The third column is what actually happened. So you can have all the plans you want, but the third column is the reality. And what you see here is, and what I don't see in other places, so that's good news, is that your revenues came in better than budget. $11.9 million in total versus $11.6 million estimate. Most of the municipalities that I've dealt with this year, most of the school districts I've dealt with, are coming in shortages on the revenue side of the budget. So this was obviously prepared as a very conservative budget in tough times where everybody else's sales tax is falling short, interest income is falling short, tax collections are not as good. There's been a slowdown in people being able to pay their taxes. So all those things have conspired to have other people come in short on the revenues. You actually, as you can see in the variance column, had a positive $234,000. again, pretty consistent with last year. Your revenues year to year, if you compare to page 47, are approximately the same, $11.9 million. In the middle of the page, total expenditures, you could see this year came in at $10.6 million. So compared to that revised budget estimate of just over $11 million, you underspent the budget by $400,000, or just under 4%. Pretty consistent with last year. Last year, you underspent the budget by about $600,000. But that means you could see that there is a little tightening of the budget slack that is in there, and it shows you that the budget is getting tight. And obviously, as you're going forward, there's going to be more stresses on the budget to keep the budget in line. But for this year, things came out well. So when you get down to the bottom, in the actual column, third number up, you see a positive $108,000. That means your revenues exceeded your expenses by $108,000. So that's good news, because most people, that's a negative number this year. So compared to your revised budget estimate, where you thought you were going to use $458,000 of your savings account, not only did you not use any of the savings account, but you actually added $108,000 to your coffers. You started the year with fund balance of just about $3.3 million. So at the end of the year, you end with a fund balance of $3.4 million. If you flip back to page 45, 45 is the balance sheet. So 45 is the snapshot that accountants take at a particular point in time. Your time is May 31st. And you see the 3.4 is the second number up from the bottom. And fund balance is just the difference between your assets and your liabilities. And this balance sheet that you see is different than if you operate a business and look at a balance sheet for a business. You don't see any long-term assets on here, like capital assets, infrastructure, buildings, equipment. That you don't see on here. Flip side is, if you look in the liability section, you don't see any long-term liabilities, debt and borrowings and those kinds of things. Because in government, the balance sheet is to be reported on a current basis, current resources. So it's just current assets, current liabilities. That information about debt and capital assets is elsewhere in the report, but not for your fund operations and what you really focus on. So you could see that you got in the top half, $3.9 million in assets for the village. Mostly, as you can see, in the form of cash, $3.4 million. Again, municipalities, unlike New York State, but all the municipalities and school districts in New York State are prohibited from having their funds invested in mutual funds, hedge funds, derivatives, swaps, credit defaults, all the stuff that got everybody else in trouble and the state in trouble.
Gold bullion, that's what
Gold bullion. You're only allowed to be in FDIC-insured commercial banks. The flip side, of course, is that the interest rate right now is about 0.1%, or not much more than that. So you get the security of having these balances fully collateralized by your banks for the amounts in excess of FDIC coverage. They have to post collateral to secure your deposits in excess of that amount. So that's the flip side, and take it for what it is. In the liability section, you see you have about $500,000 or $600,000 in total liabilities. Most of that is in the form of deferred revenues, which I think I heard talked about before the meeting here. But basically, that's because of your fiscal year end being May. A lot of the times you collect money for the summer programs that you run. You have parking permits that you collect in advance. So this is any of the cash that comes in prior to May 31st, but it's really for stuff that's going to happen after the fiscal year. So the money is deferred and not recognized as revenue until the next year. The other big number on there that we should just talk about is the due to retirement system. It's $102,000. You participate in the employees' retirement system and the police and fire retirement system. The contribution rate, and it's a very simple calculation of your obligation. You take the payroll of the people who are in the employees' retirement system and the payroll of the people in the police and fire retirement system. For the employees' retirement system for this past fiscal year, I believe the rate was approximately 7% of payroll. So you take your payroll, multiply by 7%, that's what you owe the retirement system. The good news was that was actually reduced a little bit from the prior year. The bad news is it's going up. It already went up in the year you're in now, probably to about 11% or so on a weighted average basis, 11% payroll. And for the next year that you'll be going into budget deliberations on soon, I believe ERS is about 16%. 15, 16%? Am I right?
15.
15. So you could see that it's doubled in 2 years what you had to pay. In the general fund, for example, this year, to the employees' retirement system, you paid about $145,000, $150,000. So double that, and you need an extra $150,000 just 2 years later.
Why is that a liability, not just a current cost?
It's a liability because the state fiscal year ends March 31st, so you are paid through March 31st. We set up a liability to cover the period April and May of your fiscal year.
Oh, so it's just a
Because you won't pay that
deferral,
till
it's just a timing deferral.
That one's a timing, because you won't pay that April-May obligation
Right.
until December, right now, because it's based on the state fiscal year. So that's with the ERS. Now, with the police retirement, the
So,
rates...
I'm sorry, so when we look at our, back on 46, when we look at our employee benefits,
Yeah,
which would have the expense of pension expense in there.
yes.
It's under expended by that deferral amount, right?
No.
No?
No, because you see you had, and it's not a deferral amount, but you see the last year's 104,000
Yes?
in that same line? So that 104 flowed through and hit the expense this year.
Right.
Or it offset the expense for this year because
But
you
it was
paid a bill
budgeted.
in December.
I mean,
Right,
that
it's all
line
part
of-
of the budget.
That line on page 46, we literally did incur expenses that were below
Yes.
budget.
If you turn to page 53, that's the detail, and that's really 12 months of expense.
Right, so you see the first line on 53,
Right.
on the landscape page, you see on the state retirement employees, 144,000.
Right.
So that encompasses your 12 months, so it's the 2 months, it's the bill for your fiscal year, June to March, and an estimate of April and May, that's gonna be paid later this year.
So when we look at, and this is just as a framework for helping us budget, you know, one of the things that I think everybody, I mean, I'm surprised at just seeing the numbers in front of me, given that every employee benefit expense is going up by double digits.
Correct.
To see that our actual 2009 expense was actually less, excuse me, more than our 2010 expense. How would you
Right.
explain that?
Well,
We have
again-
fewer employees, or,
No, remember what I said was that for the ERS, the rate was about 7% of payroll for your fiscal year. I believe the year before it was like 8 and change. The state retirement system lowered
It was lower,
the rate.
yeah.
And
Not by
the
much.
effective rate this year was
it
about
was
7%.
lower in 2010 than
They
it was?
lowered it, yes.
No.
Yes.
2009.
Yeah, they did.
Was
For
lower
the
than
bill that was
2008.
due March of 2010, that rate was less than the rate that was on the March '09 state bill. By a small fraction.
At '09, it's 180, and in
Right, and
10,
now it went
it's
down.
160.
Correct. So that went down a little, but now that I call it the effective rate because you have different tiers of employees, tier
Right.
1 through now 5. So each tier has a different rate, but most people are in tiers 3 and 4. And that, if you take the effective rate on the overall bill, is about 7% and change this year. That is going to 11% on the bill that probably was just paid.
What did we?
So that's like a 40 or 50% increase.
And then we're gonna get it again the year
And then it's
following.
going from 11 to 15 or 16,
So
which
what
would
did
be
we
another.
average for the 2 months that, the difference between the state fiscal year and ours? Did we have to assume,
Right, well,
what
what
that-
the calculation that was done to arrive at this was to take the April and May salaries and multiply it by that new rate.
we did do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes, that's
So
part of our
pension
audit
costs-
procedures to make sure.
So in 2009, the pension cost effective rate was higher than 2010. And so the fact that it dropped for whatever boneheaded reason.
Slightly, yes.
The state dropped it, was enough to offset our health cost increases, all the other increases that actually happened in 2010 for all the other benefit items?
Well, we may have
I
been.
mean,
over-
Why do you
the
say
actual
that?
amount of benefits that we paid in 2009 was higher than what we paid in 2010 in an environment where all of them are going up. I mean, I find that pretty remarkable.
What makes you assume that, Jonathan? that-
Well-
We paid
Do we have a lot less?
we paid $2,251,000 in 2009, and we paid $2,223,000 dollars in benefits in 2010.
No,
where are you
you're
getting
wrong
that?
line. You're looking at debt service. One step up.
Employee benefits.
No, employee benefits.
The total employee benefit
Well-
line,
Oh,
original,
is
It
one
wa-
oh-
it
is
was
108
less in 2010 than it was
It is
in
slightly less by
2009.
about 25,000 overall. If you look at page 53,
Which is
that's
just,
where the
I
detail
just find
is.
that counterintuitive, because I think we had roughly the same number of employees, maybe a little less, but it just seems counterintuitive relative to all that's
Well,
going on in
again,
the
I
world.
think certain health insurance costs did not spike up as much
as they're going to,
as they're going to this
Yeah,
year.
this year,
I
yeah.
think certain plans held pretty flat for almost 2 years, 1 or
Okay.
2 years.
I-
And then
I
obviously
would
you could have-
disagree with that, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think our overall health insurance costs were up more than double digits.
No, they weren't.
No,
Our health insurance
no.
costs for
I thought they were up 11%.
2010 were 1,154,000. In 2009, 1,140,000. Now, of course, those numbers are affected by who takes what plan, whether people took family or single. You know, those
What
numbers.
page you on? Because that sounds like
53.
nearly 10% to me.
53. No, it's $14,000.
$14,000.
Oh, okay. Well,
But again, those numbers don't necessarily reflect the premium differences. It's the mix of who took what
right.
and how many employees. And in the case of the retirement plan, everything is running late, right? I mean, what we read about and what we know about for the numbers that are predicted for the future, there's a
Is
time lag
substantial, yeah.
in where it appears. Next year, we'll be looking at that grim 50% increase.
Right, on both the pensions
Pensions, health.
and the health.
Even though this year, as we work towards our next budget, we're in the second round
Right.
of those increases.
Right.
I think as well, and I don't know if this is to Trustee Cunningham's point, I think we amortized the retirement system incentive, and I don't think we had to pay it in 10. I think it ended.
Right.
So we used to pay more toward the retirement system because we had an amortization on a previous retirement incentive. So this fiscal year that just ended was the first time we hadn't
That,
paid
that
it.
would make sense then.
And that
Right.
dropped,
Okay.
I think that was
okay.
about 18,000.
I just want to, if there's something to be learned from these numbers, I just want to make sure
Yeah,
we
no,
learn
no.
them, because if we
But I
can,
wouldn't say it's because the state, did the right thing, because they didn't, their rate was pretty
God
constant.
forbid we assume that.
No, their rate was pretty constant, but I
That's
think,
why we have you around, John.
yeah, I think in 09-10 was the first year we didn't have to amortize an 8-year amortization anymore.
Got you.
We paid
Okay,
off-
that would make
We paid
sense.
off an
That would make sense.
amortization,
There's your difference here.
Okay, thank you, Patty.
if memory serves me.
Although it's only
So-
18,000, so I mean, that's just a piece
It
of
was,
the
it
mix.
was
Yes,
money, yeah, I
all
think it was
helpful.
about 18. Mary will check my fun facts, though, but I think that was part of it. Thank you, Scott.
So when we take the total assets up top of the 3.9 and those liabilities of about 600, that's where we're left with that 3.4 million in fund balance that I mentioned in the aggregate a few minutes ago. You could see, though, that your fund balance has 4 components to it. 29,000 is set aside for prepaid items. Those were items that were paid for prior to May 31st. The cash went out the door. They benefit the next period. So it's shown as a prepaid. We reserve your fund balance because the cash went out the door. By board resolution this year, you established a future capital projects reserve of $150,000. So again, this would have to be part of an adopted budget to utilize these funds to send them back to the capital projects fund for whatever purpose is decided on for this project. So $150,000 fund balance set aside for that. This year, you gave back a little more than last year. You gave back $300,000 in fund balance in this accumulation of savings over the years, and you gave that back in the form of tax relief. Otherwise, to support the budget that was adopted for 10-11, you would have needed an additional $300,000 property tax levy. So when you take the 3.4 million total fund balance and you back off those 3 pieces, you're left with 2.9 million in your undesignated fund balance, which is pretty consistent with where you were last year, about $100,000 down. That represents about, as Rob gave to me before, about 23% of your 10-11 budget. That's a very strong position to be in this economic environment. Most of the places are struggling, and their credit ratings are getting downgraded because they don't have the fund balance. And you're able to do that and be able to, handle things that are unfortunately going to be coming up, in the next fiscal year. It's certainly not going to be any more state aid. It's likely there'll be less state aid.
The only blessing in that is we don't get any, right?
Luckily, you don't get too much, so that wouldn't impact
Can't take
you
away what you didn't
dramatically.
get to begin with.
That's right. So, overall, again, as I said last year, this village is in a very strong financial position. And I would be glad to take any questions or comments that you have.
Do you have a sense for, and this is obviously outside your formal responsibility as
Okay.
auditors, about the 5-year prospects for the New York State pension?
You would have to get somebody
rub
from
the
the
crystal
pension
ball, right?
system. It's likely that the
Yes.
rates will go up even from here, or maybe stabilize at this level. If I recall correctly,
100% of W-2? I mean, what's the?
I mean, at one point, DiNapoli was floating a white paper that indicated that the contributions to police and fire could go to 50% of payroll.
it could now. Again, I'm not an actuary. I don't know
Yeah.
how they do. I know they generally
Yeah.
use like a 5-year smoothing
Right.
method so that spikes in market conditions in 1 year don't impact the employers in 1 year. But historically, where the rates have been for like both systems, the last few years, those rates have been below historical averages. If I remember back
That's true.
to my early days of doing this 20 years ago,
I mean, they were down to near zero.
they
at
were
some
down to
point.
near zero for an
Right.
extended period of time.
They were
Then they changed where employees in tiers 3 and 4 always had to contribute 3% of their salary. And then 10 or 12 years ago, they stopped that once a tier 3 or 4 person had 10 years in the system, they didn't have to pay the employees 3%, pay their own share anymore of 3%. So, there's been a lot of changes. Now they've adopted this tier 5. By the time that winds its way through the system will be many years, down the road, and I'm sure they'll change it as
And
we
it's
go
not
down the road.
automatic on the police side, that's only in the non-uniform side.
Right. And your big obligation, obviously, is the public safety side, where those rates, right now are already going to hit, 20% or so, I believe, in the upcoming year. Patty, am I correct in that?
17.
17,
Little over
18?
17, but yeah,
Yeah.
the subsequent year, we're,
But, I mean, it ratifies
higher
what-
payroll, it
where we
hurts.
are in our thinking, that,
Yeah.
that not only is there no relief in sight from the rates we anticipate for next year, but that the odds are it gets darker before it gets brighter.
I mean, the only relief they did provide is they allow you this option to go
Right.
into amortizing this thing,
Right.
but then you're financing a
At
current
5,
obligation
yeah.
over 10 years.
Over 10 years.
Which is,
Yeah,
I mean,
which-
in essence,
And they're
just,
at 8%.
just
Kicking the can
perpetuating,
down the
I
road.
mean, now there's an Albany theory for you, right? Right?
Or a federal government theory.
Right.
So either way.
Yeah, but we don't get to print the stuff.
No,
They
you
do,
don't.
or the-
They do. So, yeah, no, I mean, obviously there's going to be challenges between health insurance costs, pension costs, labor costs, and other things that I probably don't even think of, from the audit, but I'm sure Patty thinks of internally, of certain obligations. So, again, you're really in the best position to deal with it at this juncture. But obviously, but tax certioraries are a big thing, as I heard, prior to this meeting. You have several big tax certioraries, and you used fund balance, as what I heard, to fund a portion of a tax certiorari obligation. So depending how the rest of your budget, plays out, that may not give you this surplus to add to your coffers, and it could begin diminishing those coffers. There's obviously pressure to keep, property tax increases to a minimum, or certainly, below where they've historically been, in Westchester County. So, you got all these challenges that, the revenue side, the expense side, and they're not moving in the right direction. You'd like them to move together, but they're not. So that, that's going to certainly be a challenge. And that every meeting I go to is going to have a challenge. The school districts are going to have a particular challenge in the next fiscal year because, they've received a lot of that stimulus ARA money, and that drops off the table at the end of this, school year. So what they're going to
And
do
Albany
in their
can't
next
make
school
it
year.
up.
And Albany's not making it up, and in all likelihood, they're going to probably be cutting state aid,
Right, the new governor is gonna,
because they have a, alleged $9 billion
$9 billion.
gap. So, they can't print money either,
Right.
so.
They cut the unfunded mandate.
We've asked annually, and now, of course, it's a different backdrop in which we ask the question about what an appropriate fund balance is. Back in the days when, the current difficulties were not anticipated, I recall Les Storch talking about 15%. Above 15% starts to be, are you holding on to too much money?
Right.
Hard to see that. I mean, obviously we're happy to be in as strong a position as we are, but given what we've confronted with tax certs and a substantial refund of $700,000 alone to a single big condo complex, we could have seen $1 million evaporate in a single year.
Right.
In the end, elected to bond part of it and the like. But
Right.
would it be fair to say that the old sense of 15% being maybe healthy, and you wouldn't want to go beyond that? Kind of the rules have been rewritten.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
listen, I mean, depending who you talk to would have a different perspective.
Yes.
A taxpayer group may say, I want you to have less. Moody's may say, I want you to have more. So,
Moody's would like us to have.
So, I mean, you have to decide what is needed for your, operations, and, can you provide the services? Are you gonna have to make cutbacks in services? And, you gotta weigh that against tax increases. I know a lot of municipalities who, are struggling are, trying to, to speak with their unions, trying to, negotiate, certain things to maybe lower, labor costs or help defer things. So we're seeing that in places that are struggling more. So I don't think you want to get to that part where you're in a desperate situation. So right now you're in a good situation to be able to deal with this. But you're right. I mean, big tax certiorari's or other things can significantly deplete this.
Well, and the
Relatively
erosion of the
quickly.
tax base in general, just as a result of all of that.
Right. Right.
But at any rate, on the brighter side of things, am I hearing from you, and is it fair to say that the Village of Pleasantville is in, relative to its peers, a very strong, perhaps even enviable position?
I would think that's a fair statement. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, my only comment would be that I think that that's the case, but if we do not address the same issues that these other communities are addressing that are in a less enviable position, we're gonna very quickly find ourselves right there as well. That the
No
same
doubt.
factors affecting them, because they didn't plan for it and weren't in the position where they were able to have this kind of cushion, they're having to deal with it real time. But if we ignore the fact that we won't have to deal with that, and that those same forces are at play, those communities aren't at play here, that's a big mistake. They're very much as much at play here.
Yeah.
It's just a timing issue.
I would agree with you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time.
Very
Thank
much.
you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more question, and we may already have this. Do we have this in PDF form that we put up on the website?
We can send it to you in PDF.
Yeah, that's easy enough.
Yeah, that'd be great. So let's,
Yeah,
Mayor,
we
I
can get
just,
that to you.
before we break, I just want to obviously thank Scott and Rob for their work as usual, but I want to acknowledge Mary and Pam. I don't get a chance to do that often, but our treasurer and deputy treasurer are, in my opinion, two of the finest people in the field, not only with the type of effort they demonstrate, but their competency is outstanding. So I want to thank you both again for working with me this year and for helping the board get through, this very tumultuous economic, condition. It makes it a lot easier for all of us knowing that we have the right people in the right places right now, to get facts and figures and to make sure that our information is good information, so we can stay on top of, as Jonathan said, the wave, and keep our timing, in step, so we don't fall into a difficult situation. So thank you both, and thank you for
You're
your
here.
I'm just gonna follow up real quickly by saying that, Patty, that was nice. We've sat through these auditors' opinions that weren't unqualified, I believe. Or at least they had a list of
Okay.
issues
Okay.
that they wanted us to deal with.
Okay.
Before Pam and before Mary were here. And every year we've eaten through a number of those, let's call them qualifications.
Yes.
To the point where this is about the last couple of years is as clean as I've ever seen our books, and I actually feel like we have a complete understanding of where we are with the numbers. And so that is an extraordinarily helpful thing.
I echo that. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Pam. It's as Jonathan indicated, there have been years before your time here that we were looking at numbers on Friday and they were different on Monday because something had been found. And although one can only respect the effort to find an error, it's nice to think that
I'm so glad I
there-
wasn't here for that.
errors don't need to be found. So it's for echo all that's been said, a source of not only comfort to know that the numbers are solid and right and that the due diligence has already been done, but it's the platform that will allow us to plan for the future and given us the opportunity to go through the process we went through in the last budget process where we thought not only about what we're doing this year, but how we ought to morph that to reshape the budget in a number of ways going forward. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
It
you.
is a team effort,
Thank you.
I have to tell you.
Yeah.
So many people contribute to this, and we have a solid team.
We
Great.
love our jobs too, don't we, Lindy? We love what we do.
All right, let's just close for the year. on
That's
that.
just a little kumbaya moment here, it's very nice.
Happy holidays.
Much
Thank you.
appreciated.
Thank
Thank you.
you
Very
Dennis.
much, you too.
So, if we could get that PDF and put that up on the website.
I will do that,
Just for
absolutely.
the
But
benefit of anybody who cares to read it. It's 78 pages of
Joy.
exciting reading that will
Thank you, fellas, thank you, good to see you
Um,
both. Thank
be
you.
something to pick up after you watch the latest edition of
I don't
Glee.
think-
You'll be
you know
glad
what?
to
My
you'll be
email
glad
won't
to read it.
take
So,
it. You may have to,
with that in
My
mind,
mailbox.
any further comments?
take it. Mary's.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
Judy, we renumbered. Did you get that?
Get home safe.
Okay, so with that, we'll go to our resolutions. Let me ask, was there any comment from the public? Anybody want to say anything? Anybody?
Thank you both.
Nope. Okay, Mindy, number
Save the staff
243.
meeting.
Resolved that the pre-check register dated December 13th, 2010, covering check numbers 68060 through 68191 has been reviewed and they are hereby approved as listed below. The general fund, $154,323.86. The miscellaneous revenue fund, $430. Water fund, $84,034.07. Capital fund, $36,996.91. Refuge fund, $10,085.40. The pool fund, $31.28. Trusted agency fund, $7,666.13, for a total of $293,567.65.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments, corrections, or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Jonathan, number 243.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees has reviewed the minutes of the meetings held Monday, November 22nd, 2010, and are hereby approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments, corrections, additions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
motion approved. Brian, 245.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village attorney to proceed with the settlement of certiorari petition by Antonio and Pasquale Prospero as follows. The assessment year 2008, the original assessment was $182,000. Proposed assessment $124,160 for a reduction of $57,840. In 2009, the original assessment was $182,000. Proposed assessment for $129,300 for a reduction of $52,700. And in 2010, the original assessment of $182,000. Proposed assessment is $125,800 for a reduction of $57,200. And further resolved that the village treasurer is authorized to issue the applicable refunds in the amount of $12,806.80 to the petitioner's attorney upon receipt of an executed order from the court.
Is there a second?
Second.
This certiorari settlement is, excuse me,
God bless.
backed up by a confidential memo from our attorney on these matters, John Burkhart of Keen and Bean. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Mindy, number 246.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign an agreement with Lothrop Associates LLP, 200 Summit Lake Drive, Valhalla, New York, for architectural and design services for the conversion of the ambulance corps facility to a recreation center facility. Said amount not to exceed $12,515.
Is there a second?
Second.
As you may have heard in listening in the past, the Pleasantville Volunteer Ambulance Corps, which has lived for 55 years in the village-owned building next to the football field on football and soccer fields on Marble Avenue, has moved to a new location in the former Thorn Water District garage, which is down in the area just southeast of Pleasantville. And so that building is now vacant and has been returned to us, and we've been through a process of reviewing it and have determined that for a relatively modest expense, it will be a substantial benefit to the Recreation Department to turn it into recreation offices and to convert the garage bays into a community room that can be used for various programs. The good news is we have some money in existing capital funds that can be devoted to this purpose, and the Recreation Department also believes that having a dedicated activity room will be allow them to run some programs that will generate substantially more revenue from their programs as well. The net effect being that we can make this change at little or no impact
That's right.
on the annual budget. So with that in mind, this proposal engages Lothrop Associates, as you just heard, for $12,515 to put the plans together.
Can I just ask a couple questions about this? We've paid these guys some money to do a survey of our recreation facilities and where to locate our recreation, is that right?
Mhm.
15 grand or something
We
like
had a
that?
$14,000,
Okay, $14,000.
that was about, what, a year and a half, 2 years ago?
Yeah, we've only made actually $4,600 in payments toward that effort so far.
Well, do we owe it to them or not?
Well, it's a good question. I don't know how far they've taken that work. I think they've done a lot with PRAB, but I have a feeling that their work stopped because they were looking for some direction.
In my view,
Their deliverables, they only, there was like a third of the deliverables were met.
Okay.
Because we never decided on the location, or we didn't give any direction on of whether we would want to build it or where, and we took no action. So therefore, that's why we didn't pay them.
So it may be that we don't owe them
We may not.
anymore.
I assume they would have billed for services to date.
Well, I'm going to talk to George.
Yeah, we
We
should
do,
talk-
However,
we owe
we
them
should,
some money
it
for.
should be noted that in order for us to make a decision on going forward with this project at the ambulance corps building, that Lothrop did a considerable amount of work to get us like 9 or 10 renditions of what we decided on. Made
Oh, it
a
wasn't
number
that
of,
much.
no, there was at least 9.
Yeah, this is number 8, what you have attached. There we
Oh,
go.
but of the
Yeah.
ambulance corps building?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, they broke this down, I think there was 9 versions, and again, you have, I think, number 8 sitting here that we decided on. They also made a number of site visits. They went over the inventory that we currently have for the recreation department, in order to, give us some idea of what kind of storage that we need, and how to store it. They worked very hard, and delivered a tremendous amount of service to us to get us to this point on this one issue. So, I just thought
Okay, I mean,
I'm sorry, Jonathan, I
Yeah,
didn't.
and that was very helpful, because my point was that we hired, I wanted to get a better idea of what we did. We hired these guys. I know we contracted to do $14,000 or $15,000 to work with them. I hadn't heard from them, so I didn't know what was going on. And I know that this community has within the boundaries of Pleasantville, several hardworking architects, and I just wondered why these guys would get this deal and not some of the architects that are within the village and have tried to make a living within the village of Pleasantville, and that helps answer the question, so. I'm very cognizant of trying to keep business within the village where and when we can.
And I agree with that, although it was Lothrop that gave us the best price for that original planning study, and I don't want anyone to misunderstand.
No,
I don't want to misunderstand that, the fact that that original study fell into hibernation partway through was driven in significant part by the fact that at the time we originally engaged them for that, we expected to sell the old rec center and realize revenue from that. And not only did that not happen after that deal fell through, but shortly thereafter, the bottom fell out of a whole lot of economic stuff, and we were in a obviously unlikely position to be proposing to build a brand new start from scratch building. And so as a result of that, I think the steam kind of went out of that project on behalf of all of us. And so I just didn't want people to feel as though Lothrop failed in some way in that
No,
regard.
and I just needed the explanation.
Understood, so.
But is that money someplace, or is that in the, that we didn't pay
We
the?
have money in what we call Reserve for Parkland. It's a trust fund where developers over time had given us money in lieu of recreation space for development. And you can use that money to further develop parks and recreation.
So we can use some of that money for this
We can use some of
amount.
that money for this
And how much
purpose.
is in that?
We have somewhere close to $50,000 in there.
Good,
Yeah,
Yeah.
just about $50,000.
great.
Okay, so, resolution number 246, we had a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. 247, holiday parking. Who was that?
It's Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a tough one.
The Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby suspends the parking meter fees for the time allowed on 1, 2, 3 hour meters from December 14th, 2010 through December 30th, 2010 for the holiday season.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is a traditional practice and one that many other towns also represent, and I can speak on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and a number of the businesses downtown businesses who have talked to me that they look forward to it and view it as a significant advantage to the businesses to encourage holiday shopping. Just to be clear, Patty, this also includes the pay and display meter?
Yes, it
On
does.
the Manville lot?
It does. Includes any metered lot that has meters under
Okay.
3 hours.
You know, I have to say that I have, for many years, been opposed to this, as you might remember. It's one of those.
Because
I
it
do
has to
remember.
do with the holidays, that's why.
But this weekend, as I was working downtown and looking and seeing people putting money in the meter, just, I don't know what it is, given the way it all feels, the way the world feels, I thought it felt a little Scrooge-like that we weren't putting the bags over the meter. So I am.
Is that after you stole all the
I'm-
Christmas trees?
I'm voting in
and
favor of
crushed
this.
them
Did
through a
the
chipper?
Grinch's
You're
heart
a
just
mean one.
grow?
I
I know.
think the Grinch's
Said we
heart.
all thought the same thing. I was going to do a little Whoville
The little
song here.
hoof, the little,
All I can say is I've been opposed to this in the past because I thought it would encourage people to sort of overstay their welcome downtown, make parking even worse. But that hasn't really been the case in
I
years
love it.
past, and I'm willing to admit that.
I thought
And-
the
and I'm
same thing
glad
when I
we're
was in
doing it.
Armonk last weekend and saw 2 wreaths on every pole up and down the beautiful streets of Armonk. The downtown of Armonk had 2 Christmas wreaths or wreaths, holiday wreaths on each side of the pole, beautifully lit all the way down the street, and then a big giant wreath on their village hall, the North Castle Village Hall, with a lit tree in front of it.
Holiday lead.
I was thinking the same thing you were thinking there,
So,
Brian.
let me remind everybody that
Brian's
even
thinking.
though we will bag the
I just won't
meters,
go there.
time
Go
limits,
there either.
time limits still apply.
Right, be
So-
courteous to the other shoppers.
You are entitled to park in the 1, 2, and 3 hour spaces for the same 1, 2, and 3 hours that you were entitled to when the meters weren't covered. And let me also say, and this is kudos to Patty, for a couple of years ago, I was in several other communities over the weekend, and our bags for the meters are better than other people's bags.
Ours
so-
are the best out there. I agree with
Exactly.
you. I'm very proud of those bags.
They're great.
Thank you,
Yes, I'm
Patty.
proud of Kathy Tucciarone.
Maybe
She
we could
watches
put one of
this. I
those
don't know,
over the
but
eagle in
Kathy
Village
takes care of
Hall.
these for
Maybe
us.
that would
Yes,
be
Tony.
the decoration.
Tony Emerson?
Go ahead, Tom.
Oh, the eagle.
We should put one on top of the Christmas tree.
No, put one over the
Holiday.
eagle's
Come
head.
on.
Tony Emerson, 25 Country Club Lane, one of the directors on the executive board of the Pleasantville Chamber of Commerce. So on behalf of the businesses in Pleasantville, I was very happy this morning to see that the meetings were covered one day early. However, it would have a nice ring to it if it started on a Monday and ended on a Friday. So we would request the dates be changed to the 13th to the 31st.
Well, the thing is, Tony, we're closed as a holiday, so there's no,
I'm sorry?
parking is free on the 31st. We're closed for the holiday. So we cut it off on the 3rd because there's free parking on the 31st.
There's free parking anyway on the 31st.
Yeah, for the holiday. So, I
people-
mean, the board can say that,
People
but,
don't necessarily.
yeah, that's
I mean, are we
fine
gonna
by
leave the
me.
bags on for the 31st?
Well, no one's here to take them off for Saturday, you know, it's up to you.
I see.
We would take them off Thursday, but there's no, late in the day. But there's no parking. We wouldn't be giving tickets out on Thursday. Friday, we're closed for the New
But-
Year's.
But do people
holiday.
know that New Year's Eve day is a holiday?
I don't know that. I
They
don't know.
don't-
I mean,
they
I'm
wouldn't
fine.
know that.
I totally understand. We can make it 31st. It's fine by me. We're going to take the bags off a day early anyway, because nobody's here to do it. I'm not going to pay overtime for somebody,
right.
to,
I
take them
understand
off
that.
on
So-
But why
Friday.
don't we just leave them up all that weekend?
We can. We could
But
leave
then
it.
you
It's
won't
up to
get
the
revenue
board.
the whole weekend.
It's up to the board.
Well, is
Well,
there?
it's
what-
Christmas
Well, we
Eve
wouldn't
is
get, we're
Friday.
not getting revenue anyway.
You're not
We-
really going to
we
get,
do get some
it would only be
revenue.
Saturday. I mean, it's
Well,
worth it.
Well, wouldn't we
It's-
not, if the holiday isn't, New Year's Day is Saturday.
holiday, obviously.
Is a holiday also, so.
Yeah,
All right,
wouldn't
so
be-
how
last
about
2
this?
Fridays, the
What
village
if-
is
What if
closed.
we extended through January 1
It's fine.
and take the bags off
That's
when we
fine.
come back?
That's
You okay with
great.
it? All right,
we have
so
to
who was
amend
the
that.
mover?
Thank you.
Jonathan was the mover, you okay with that?
Yeah.
January, so that will now
I
be
think it'll be the
December
3rd.
14 through,
You're talking about the 3rd.
2011.
The 3rd?
well, let's say,
The third- It'd be the 3rd.
well, let's say, we can say January
Well, we
1.
need them off Monday morning, though, for sure.
Right, I understand the goal.
Through January 1.
Prior.
Seconder is okay with that?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye, motion approved.
Thank you, Tony.
great.
Thank you,
All right,
Tony,
thank
good
you,
point.
I
Tony.
like that.
Oh, wow, look at the Grinch, he's really likes that.
Brian,
Yeah.
number 248, acknowledgement of a zoning text.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby acknowledges receipt of a zoning text amendment petition from Leduca Auto Service, 52 Depew Street, and refers same to Planning Commission for review and comment.
Is there a second?
Second.
We've received from Leduca Auto Repair and their attorneys, Zarin and Steinmetz, am I right? Here
Yes.
in my stack?
Yes.
A request to revise the zoning in the A1 downtown district, which is the district that covers Leduca Auto, that being the auto repair service that is between the Sawmill Parkway and Depew Street, adjacent to Grant Street, to allow an accessory use of selling used automobiles. That is not a permitted use in the current zone, and they have proposed in this zoning amendment that it be made a permitted use subject to special permit. So this resolution sends it, as all such proposals are, for referral for comment to the planning commission. We had a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved.
Oh, boy.
Is there a, is there
No,
a,
this is Brian, isn't it?
no, it's
He
you.
he
Is there a
just got
time limit on that? Or is that a time estimate for the planning commission?
I think
They
planning gets
have
what?
45 days.
45 days to
Yeah.
respond, although sometimes respond sooner than that.
Yep.
Mini number 249.
You're kidding.
Just
2 pages long.
summarize it.
If you don't
I
want to
have
read
to
the
know what
first
it
part,
is.
you know, maybe you can just say that we're deleting the current section, section 61-22.
Yeah, Judy can, you summarize, and
and-
that's easy,
And
Judy.
then just read what we're proposing for the new one.
Okay.
Just-
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village clerk to notice a public hearing for Monday, December 27th, 2010, at 8 p.m. prevailing time, 80 Wheeler Avenue, Pleasantville, New York, to hear comments as it pertains to amending Chapter 61, Dogs, sorry, that's the name of the chapter, Dogs. Doesn't say what kind of dog, but it's dogs.
As compared to
Section
63
right.
cows, you know.
Section 61-22, Article 3, dog license fees as follows. So we're deleting that current chapter. within the current chapter, and we're adding that all dogs within the Village of Pleasantville, 4 months of age or older, unless otherwise exempted, shall be licensed. The owner of each dog required to be licensed shall obtain complete and return to the Village of Pleasantville a dog license application along with the dog license fees, any applicable license surcharges, and such additional fees as may be established by the Village of Pleasantville as set forth in the master fee schedule. Otherwise, the Grinch will come and get your little dog. Each
not in
license
favor of this
application shall be accompanied by proof that the dog has been vaccinated against rabies or a statement from a licensed veterinarian that such vaccination would endanger the dog's life, in which a case of vaccination shall not be required. Point C, each license shall be valid for 1 year and shall not be transferable. D, exemptions. There shall be no fee for any license issued for any guide dogs, hearing dogs, ward dogs, or police work dogs. Each copy of any license for such dog shall be conspicuously marked guide dog, hearing dog, ward dog, or police work dog, as may be appropriate. Point E, dogs owned by persons over 65 years of age. The first 2 dogs owned by 1 or more persons, each of whom is 65 years of age or over, are exempt from payment of the village fee for dog licenses. Point F, an additional fee will be added to the license fee for any unspayed or unneutered dogs as set forth by the master fee schedule.
Is there a second?
Second.
We think, how does this differ from the current one that we have, Judy?
It's almost identical. The difference is that we have to issue the licenses as opposed to the state.
Right, that's
So
the only,
It's an administrative process that we are compelled to undertake by a mandate of the state of
there's-
New York.
there's no penalty. I mean, how could we have a chapter like this where we're saying that you have to license your dog 4 months or older? Otherwise,
There are still, the penalties
There are
are still in
penalties.
the code.
Yeah.
We're just,
We just
okay,
took the one
we're just
section that-
exempting, that we're just changing this
There's more
part.
to this chapter on dogs than what you see.
Oh.
We're just changing the part
This
that
section.
requires the licensing. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay, so is there a
So
second?
now we're
Do we
doing
have
it
a
to the
second?
village
There's
because
another
the-
section that
the
says
state is no longer
That's right.
doing it.
The other
Okay.
sections say you have to clean up after your dog, you have to, keep your dog on a leash, all that stuff.
Okay.
All right, so this resolution announces a public hearing that will take place 2 weeks from today, Monday, December 27, at which point anybody who has
We
dog
really have a
opinions is
meeting then?
welcome to come. And
Monday.
with the exception of guide dogs, I'm sorry to report that your dog is not welcome at the public hearing, but you could bring a statement from your dog if they haven't. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Number 250, Jonathan.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village clerk to notice a public hearing for Monday, January 10, 2011, 8 p.m. prevailing time, 80 Wheeler Avenue, Pleasantville, New York, to hear comments as it pertains to amending Chapter 173 Vehicle and Traffic, Section 173-52, schedule for one-way streets as follows. Amending Chapter 173 Vehicles and Traffic, we are adding Parkway Terrace north by west.
North by northwest?
Well, I guess that's what that is.
Well, it's
North by-
northwesterly direction, it's a little
North
odd.
in a westerly
Yes.
direction, from Bedford Road to Manville Road.
Is there a second?
Second?
This
Thank
is a public hearing, again, Monday, January 10 at 8 p.m., that arises from some longstanding concerns of some of the residents on Parkway Terrace, not only about the traffic conditions, but also parking conditions and pedestrian conditions. We are looking to improve the pedestrian conditions in particular by creating a little better area on the edge of the road adjacent to the sawmill side of the road for pedestrians. And in order to make that happen, believe that it may be necessary to make Parkway Terrace one way so that you could go on Parkway from Bedford to Manville, but not from Manville to Bedford. So if that is a matter of concern to you and you have
Please come
opinions,
to the meeting.
Monday, January 10, 8 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 251, John.
Yeah, one quick note on 251.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Patty, we need, well, look, I'm one vote, but This one vote needs extreme clarification on what that slip ramp is. If it can't be closed, then I'll be very much against doing this until we close the slip
I
ramp.
hope to
I don't
get
know how
somebody
much
from the
I'm
state
for
to
it
be
either,
at this
but-
meeting. That would be really helpful.
That would be good.
So,
Okay.
not to do anything too prematurely.
251
It's Brian.
is Jonathan, isn't it?
No,
Jonathan
just
is
right,
right.
sorry,
252.
Right.
I just did the one.
251, Brian, it's renumbered to
Oh,
251.
251. Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget amendments to fund over budget accounts, taking $350 from legal contractual and putting it in miscellaneous charges debt service.
Is there a second?
Second.
That
All
was
in favor?
also for legal
Aye.
fees.
Aye,
Sorry.
motion approved. That
Legal
was,
fees and debt service.
Oh,
Yeah.
was there clarification?
Yeah, I was just explaining that it was also, it's not as clear, but we incur legal expenses as we take out bonds and we go to market for bonds. And this $350 is coming from general legal, going into a line for debt service to pay legal fees for that as well. So it has a
So it's all in the
relationship.
same
so we
family.
Yeah.
don't need to amend it, though. It's just, you're just clarifying.
We
what
have
it
to
is.
move it because there is a separate line to pay legal
Got it.
fees for debt.
Mhm.
It just ran out of money.
All right, that was our last resolution. I wanted to end with a note that another of the year-end events that we had last week was our annual Volunteers in Pleasantville Dinner, which is an event we have held annually and invite members of boards, commissions, and task forces to a dinner where we have an opportunity to thank them for the service that they offer and for everybody in the village of Pleasantville. It is hard to say enough times how many people there are out there doing an awful lot of work to make this village not only work right, but work fairly on behalf of applicants before boards and commissions, and also work hard to think about what the future of Pleasantville might look like. And there are plenty of your friends and neighbors who are getting up early and staying up late in various different capacities to make all of that happen. And we deeply appreciate all of that. As you might imagine, some of those volunteer tasks involve getting yelled at every now and again, and they sometimes involve difficult votes when someone's interests have to rise over somebody else's. And I have, as I think all of us do, enormous respect for the people that are willing to participate in the business of government and the business of the village and in the future visioning of what the place might be, to keep this place the wonderful place it is and to sustain it for the future. So thanks very much to all of you. I think you know who you are.
Yep.
Some of them wear more than one hat. Tony Emerson.
Yes, there's one right there.
Right there. They're
Tony
like, "We
Emerson, who
spotted one."
spoke a little earlier, is mentioned that she's on the executive board of the Chamber of Commerce, but she is also a key player in the farm market and has been a key player in the Business Support Council and a key player in just about everything we have ever done. So if you see Tony Emerson on the street, I have two pieces of advice. The first is thank her, and the second is after you thank her, run, unless you're willing to get roped into a volunteer task.
Right.
So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So-
Second?
Second.
All in favor? I thank you all. We're back here for a work session a week from today, Monday the 20th, and our next regular meeting, Monday, December 27th. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.